We can begin to
We can
begin.
begin. We can begin to
So
begin.
lucky you'll get through it and we'll be over.
We ready?
Okay.
All right, good evening and welcome to the September 12, 2018 regular meeting of the Garrison Union Free School District Board of Education. Our first agenda item, as always, is the Pledge of Allegiance. So if you can join me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Before we began, the board's audit committee met with our auditors to review their external audit report, and they are with us now to provide the full board with their with the results of their annual audit. Chris Kropp from PKF O'Connor Davies. I want to make sure let's get that right. We go back to the days when before PKF. So,
Well,
welcome.
thank you very much. First, I'd like to introduce John Walsh. John was the senior on the job this year, so he was here 5 days during the week with the rest of the team. And he just helped present with the audit committee, so if there's any questions, John will jump in and help.
Great.
As always, I'd like to begin by thanking the board for giving up the time. I know you have a busy schedule, and we appreciate the opportunity to present the results of your financial statements. And I'd like to thank the superintendent, Laura, and Sue for all their help and assistance. Obviously, you can't conduct an audit without the assistance of staff, and as always, they're very cooperative and helpful during the course of the process, even though sometimes it is painful. All right, so to begin with, John, you got to kind of move to the other side, maybe. We'll go over an agenda very quickly. I'll do an overview of required communications that I have to required to make with the board. We'll look at your results of your fiscal year 2018. We'll look at some of your major revenue streams and what variations they may have had in the budget. We'll give you a little bit of a history on those revenues. We'll talk about expenditures, a history of your revenue and expense, your fund balance, which is always important to you because it allows you to know how much you have available for future years. The other fund balances, you do have some small other funds, and usually we don't speak about those, but I thought maybe you'd like to see a little bit of the results of those funds this year. I put in a slide about debt service because I know that you're contemplating capital projects, so I thought you might be interested in seeing how much debt you had in the payment that are left. And then last, I'll talk about what's known as GASB Statement number 75. That's a new pronouncement this year, so it did alter your financial statements. It did have an impact on the district-wide statement, but not the results of the budget that you adopted. Okay? So to begin with, always management and those charged with governance, the board, the audit committee, your responsibilities, and those include selecting and implementing the accounting policies that are appropriate for a district of your size, to give us a financial statement that is presented in accordance with U.S. GAAP, to establish and maintain effective internal controls. So during the testing of your work, when we do sampling, we test to see if you're in compliance with your own policies. We check to see if you're in compliance with laws, regulations, provisions of your contracts, and the agreements that you have. And as I like to joke and say, provide us with all the financial documents, the most important part of our audit. And then also as a board to make sure that you're setting the proper tone at the top. So we read your board resolutions. We like to see what's going on in the district over the course of the year. In addition, we watch it on TV to see what's going on. And just to get a flavor for what might happen during the course of the year that might impact financially the district's results. Okay, our responsibility, I'll begin with the timeline. It's not a responsibility, but just to give you an idea. We came in June, on June 7th to do the preliminaries, where we leave a list of what we need. We test some transactions. We look at cash. We look at receivables. Then we come in during the field work. We were here for the week of July 23rd. So we were here the whole week with a team of 4 individuals. And they went through and did all their testing, sampling, and documenting the audit. We completed the audit on September 7th, so just, I think, Friday. And if you're wondering why the delay between the July 26th and September is it wasn't anything to do with your finance department. We were waiting for documentations from New York State regarding the pension plan. It didn't come out till the end of August, so we had to wait for that documentation to arrive before we could finish the field work. Our deliverables are the independent auditor's report, which we gave you a copy of. Bless you. your extra class and activities reports, and we look at your extra class and activities, and again, we on a test basis look at receipts and disbursements. Required communications to those charged with governance and the management letter. Those are one document now, so it includes not only our findings during the audit, but it also includes our responsibilities, yours, things like already summed up. During the course of the audit, one of the requirements is that if we do we find any indication of fraud or illegal action, we report back to the board. So I'm very happy to say that we did not find any, nor during our interviews of personnel did anybody indicate that any had occurred. But I do need to point out to the board that an audit is not primarily to find fraud, but if we do uncover it during the course, we report it to you as a board. We didn't encounter any significant difficulties during the course of the audit, and if we have any uncorrected the statements, again, bad word, but any journal entries that we propose that the administration doesn't want to make, we're required to report those to you in addition to those that we do make. So in the management letter, you'll see a list of the journal entries that we proposed, and all of them were made. There were no disagreements. And again, there were no disagreements with management. Okay, so now let's go over your 2018 results. So you have 4 columns on the document on the slide in front of you. We have the original budget, which is the budget that was adopted by the public. You have the final budget, which is after the board makes any modifications during the course of the year. You have the actual results. We have what are called encumbrances, and you have what's called the variance with the final budget. So if you go up 3 numbers from the bottom in the first column, you adopted your budget a year and a half ago for the 2017-18 year. You decided you were going to use $878,000 of the fund balance. The reason you use that, obviously, is to help minimize the impact on the taxpayers, keep taxes at the lowest rate possible, and stay within the state's tax cap. That number, 878, is made up of 2 pieces. You had $103,000, so I'm rounding off, worth of encumbrances that you rolled over from the prior year. Those are purchase orders where items were ordered at the end of the year, but weren't received until the new fiscal year. So those roll over, so there's no budget impact on the new year. Then you also utilized $775,000 of your reserves, as I said, to help keep taxes at a level that you thought was sustainable for the population. Your final budget, you didn't change. So you didn't add or decrease the budget at all, so that same 878 flowed through. But how did you do? You actually, if you go 3 numbers up in the middle column, you actually had a surplus of $470,000. So not only did you not utilize the surplus, the fund balance, you actually added to your fund balance, so you had a very good year. And to the tune of about $1.2 million better than budget. The next slide, we'll talk about a little bit how you got there. So this next slide is a list of some of your major revenues. So you can see I listed your property tax, your STAR payment from the state, the interest and penalties on taxes, any interest that you might have earned, if you had any insurance recoveries, state aid, and miscellaneous. Again, if we go to the 4th column, the variance with budget, you can see that you were very close to budget on all items except for miscellaneous. Now, what's included in miscellaneous this year that puts you so far over was you had a refund of an expenditure from the prior year. So what happens is during the course of the year-end process, you have to estimate how much you set aside for the tuition that you pay for the students in Gwinnett District. And that's an estimate. When the actual bills come in, there's variances, sometimes positive, sometimes negative. In this case, it was a positive $500,000. So we record that as a refund of prior year expense. So you generated a revenue surplus this year of about $500,000 on that line. And that pretty much accounts for your entire surplus. If we turn the page to the next slide, page 7, you'll see a little 5-year history of those revenues. So again, for your budget process, this might be helpful as you see your trend in these revenues. You can see you're very steady on your taxes. In 2014, you're at $8 million. 2018, you're at 8.6. So over the course of those years, you probably went up only about, I do my math in my head, about 7.5% over 5 years. So you've done a good job of keeping taxes fairly level. Again, hopefully within what people can afford to pay. The only real change you can see on this report again is the $500,000 miscellaneous, which only appears in 2018 because in past years it was recorded against expense. We reclassified it as a revenue this year because it was substantial. On the next page are your expenses for 2018. So again, you can see we have categories of general government support, instruction, transportation, benefits, debt service, and transfers out. Those transfers are the school lunch fund to the debt service fund, the capital fund. You can see that variances in instruction. Most of that is usually due to vacancies in teachers. When you put your budget together, you have a salary estimated, but if a teacher retires, you hire at a lower level, and you are lucky enough to have some savings in those lines. Transportation is saved about $181,000. And I believe that's because you did a route amendment. You looked at your routes, the buses were running, and you actually you achieved the savings of about $181,000 compared to budget.
It's also, isn't that determined by fuel prices as well?
It was, we thought that was originally, but I think fuel prices were fairly stable between the 2 years.
That's right.
You know,
That's,
so
well,
now they're going back up. But
yeah, we budget accordingly.
Right.
Reality to reality.
Right. Employee benefits, again, one of your larger categories, you did have a $234,000 savings. Most of that was in your health insurance area. Again, when you're putting together your budget, you base it on teachers that are currently enrolled and currently receiving benefits. And as that number changes or salaries changes, say on the pension line, the health insurance line, and you didn't have about $230,000. So again, you had $695,000 savings on the expense. You had a $500,000 surplus on your revenue. Thus, you generated about a $1.2 million budgetary surplus. The next slide is just a little graph to show you over the 5 years how you've been doing next to budget. So you can see in some of the years your expenditures did exceed your revenues, which looks like a loss, but you always have to remember when you appropriate fund balance, that's a planned loss. And you've always done better than your planned loss. So even though it shows that you might have expended more than you brought in as revenue, in those years you had appropriated fund balance, and you planned on having those losses, again, to keep your budget stable and level. The next page is your 5-year analysis of your fund balance. So here, what we did is we showed you how your fund balance categories have been doing over the past 5 years. You use 4 categories, 4 buckets as we call them. You have your restricted, which are restricted by outside requirements, New York State law, resolutions, items like that. Committed, which is done by the board. Assigned, which is for, again, during the budget vote, you vote to utilize money for your, to balance your budget. And unassigned, which is what's free and clear for you to use in future years. So if you look at 2018, you can see that you have $3.7 million of fund balance. That's roughly 34% of your expenditure budget. Your assigned category, which is the free and clear money, is $436. That's 4% of your budget. That's the legal requirement of New York State. You can't have more than that. We go back to the top. The district has wisely put away money for tax surcharges. So in case somebody files for a reduction in taxes, you have money put aside. You put aside money during the years when the retirement bills were going way up. So you put aside money there so that if the bills increase, you can utilize that instead of tax dollars. You have $900,000 in debt service. That's from when you bonded projects in the past, you had interest earnings on them. If there was excess money, you're required to use that for your bonded debt. You have some money put aside for employment. And then last year you added a new category, future capital projects. So I know that when you were looking towards doing a new project, you decided to take some of your excess money and put it into this capital project to avoid bonding and to save money when you do those projects. And then you also have a bucket of money put away for employees' benefits. That's for when a teacher or employee retires, they've accumulated sick or vacation leave. This covers that expenditure for you. All right. On the next page, like I said, are your smaller funds. So you have a capital projects fund, you have a school lunch fund, and you have a special purpose fund. We'll start with the smallest, special purpose. That's for donations that were made for scholarships, for specific purposes. You have about $2,800 in that fund. You have $4,000 in your school lunch fund. So you have an excess of revenues or expenditures for the lunch program. And you have $211,000 left over in your capital project. And I believe you're anticipating using that. It's an older project. You're going to, again, apply that to that reserve for future capital projects. Again, putting away about $1 million towards the cost of the new project.
Just for the purposes of nomenclature here, these particular other funds, are they deemed restricted?
The one is special purpose is restricted.
Okay.
Because that people made a specific donation for a purpose.
Right.
So it can only be used for that purpose. The school lunch fund is considered assigned.
Assigned.
Assigned,
Okay.
not restricted, because again, you can use it for the school lunch, you can use it for that program.
Right. Right.
It's not restricted by law.
In school lunch, school lunch fund could be anything from the equipment,
To repairs, maintenance,
repairs.
anything to enhance the experience.
What about, let's say, if we are catering a particular lunch event?
I mean, I think if it was for all the students,
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
available to all the students, then yes.
Okay.
As long as it's in the cafeteria as part of the normal
Right.
school lunch and not an event.
You mean like the ice cream
No,
thing?
no.
But not for an event,
Right.
okay? And the capital projects fund is restricted depending on the source of the revenue. If it's a bond and you have excess money, it can only be used to pay down the debt associated with that bond. If it is excess.
Let me give you an example of what I'm thinking here. I don't want to drag this out, but let's say that we decided that we wanted to focus on nutrition or food education, and we decided to pick one day of the month where we were going to bring in a special cook or caterer to provide a lunch for the entire school with the purposes of educating them about the food they're eating, where the culture it comes from, etc. Could we use that fund for that particular?
I mean, it sounds like you could because it's out of the cafeteria and you're using it as a nutritional guide. So you probably could as long as it's run through the cafeteria program, not through the education side.
Right.
Doesn't that money come from the parents paying for the lunch?
Correct. So if you're substituting a different kind of lunch versus your normal lunch, then I would assume, and again, you'd have to do a little more research,
Right.
but you'd have to look to make sure that that substitute lunch met the qualifications of New York State's requirements for nutrition and all the other restrictions that are put on by the state ed department. And I don't mean that in a bad sense, but I know that they have guidelines that you have to follow. So you'd have to check to make sure that whatever you're doing is within those guidelines,
That's the same guidelines that will allow people to have free lunch, I believe.
probably.
Yeah.
All right. The next slide, very quickly, is just your outstanding debt. Currently, the district only has one bond outstanding. You're down to your last 3 payments. So you can see that by 2021, you're all paid off on your debt, and you'll be debt-free. So congratulations on that. The installment purchase debt is only for a lease on some copy machines. So you can see it's only $7,000 a year, but again, we're required to disclose.
So there will be a split second in which we are debt-free.
There you go. Enjoy it. On the next slide is the new GASB statement that I had mentioned at the board last year, where the other post-employment benefits that are making a change and it was going to impact not your fund level, the budget that you adopt, but it affects the entity-wide statement, which is what's up in front of the financial statement, which is full accrual. So if you remember, we talked about the pension accrual a couple years ago, and the GASB came out and said, it stands for Government Accounting Standards Board, they indicated that since the pension was put on at full accrual with no phase-in, they didn't want to phase in OPEB anymore, the other post-employment benefits, which is the cost of health insurance for your retirees in the future. It's the estimate of what it's going to cost you for all the employees until the day that they're no longer on your policies. And what they did was they had originally phased that in over 30 years. You were taking 1/30th every year and accruing it as a liability. They said, nope, since pension's on full, let's do this. So again, if you go up to the third number on the bottom of the slide, you'll see 15,000,009. So this year you absorbed on the entity-wide statement 15.9 million of expense where fund balance hit. So we recorded the liability, and that came out of your fund balance. And on those front statements, it makes it look like you're in deficit on the signed fund balance. But as I always like to point out to the board, there's no mechanism to fund this. You pay the bills as they come in. You're current on your bills. There's no way under New York State currently where you can fund this liability. So you've done your due diligence and you're paying all your bills. This is nothing more than an accounting transaction to try to show transparency.
So if someone wanted to say, as they frequently do about government pension obligations out into the future, we have in theory, an unfunded liability of
15 million.
Well, no, 50 million less what we have in our,
It's about 18 million.
it's 18.
The bottom number, 18,000,007, is
Right.
what you have on your books for your total liability.
Right.
The 15,900 is the prior period adjustment.
And this adjustment this change in GASB 75 update affected all
Every
similarly situated districts.
Right, every
So they
district
are-
this year, every town, county, and village, their year ends December of this year.
In New York State.
In New York State, well, no, nationwide.
In committee,
GASB is
Federal?
nationwide.
in committee, I think you explained it rather succinctly, if you don't mind me quoting you, as saying that, in theory, if the school shut down tomorrow, we would be on the hook for $18 million of retirement, or
Of health insurance.
health insurance, or other benefits.
Estimated based on the actuarial calculation.
Yeah.
Right, it's not an etched in stone number, it's
Right,
their
so,
estimate.
in other words, the state, we need to be able to communicate to people, whether it be the state or the taxpayer, what that is, so that they understand what we're sort of on the hook for.
Yes,
Okay.
But you fund that obligation as a going concern
Year in
in
year.
each year in which those
Correct.
expenses occur.
as the bill comes in from, I believe you belong to NISHIP, as the
Yes.
bill comes in, there's an amount on there for the retirees, and you pay the bill.
Pay the bill.
And you're current on that bill. It's the same as I said to you on the pension last year, when you had to pick up the liability on the pension. You got a bill, you paid it, but because the plan was underfunded, you had to show that portion of the liability that was allocated to you.
Right. Mm.
Okay?
So this is a transparency issue.
Right.
Okay.
They just think it's the right way to go. But it's not the budget you adopt. All right? As always, if you have any questions, I'm always available.
Sue, more for Sue and for Laura. How was it, in fact, that I assume they were out of the $550,000 or so that we were able to add back into reserves as a result of reimbursement for.
It was really cutting an anticipated payable out.
Right,
And every year I look at that, there's always a delay. The rates for tuition don't come out until 6 months after the year is basically over. So we're always either paying more or less. Sometimes you get a credit. This year with Highland Falls, we actually got a credit. So when I was analyzing the tuition amounts that I have as payables, I really felt that we could write off that much and still have enough in payables for future tuition for next year. So in the past, I was putting it back into the expense line on tuition, and the auditor said last year I should really go in revenue. So it's something I've done every year. It's just a matter of where I placed it this year. But this year was higher than
Substantially.
yeah. Because in the past, like, we might get a bill in December from Highland Falls for like 75 or 80,000. This year, they actually paid us, off the top of my head, I think it was like 40,000. So there you see, like the difference.
Other questions? Other questions for Chris? If not, gentlemen, thank you as always. It's always good to hear.
Thanks again for your time. And again, if you have any questions, just give a call, and we're more than happy to try to address it.
Thank you again. All right. Laura, Superintendent's remarks.
Yes, good evening, Garrison. Welcome. It's nice to see you all here. I wanted to give a formal and public accolades to Sue Hutter, our business administrator, for her stellar job in balancing our budget each year. It's just a pleasure working with her. Enrollment is up. We're up to 224 children. Many new families have moved in, so we welcome our new families, and we're thrilled that your children are here with us at the Garrison School. Last year's numbers were 221, and the year before that was 209. So we like to see increase. We like to see new faces, so welcome. On September 22nd, we will be having our playground ribbon cutting and community barbecue, and that will be hosted and funded by GSAF. So thank you. I'm sure you'll come up later, Sarah, and maybe talk a little bit more about what it's all about. But our playground, I want to say thank you to GSAF, to Sue Hutter, to Michael Twardy, Nicer Compound. All of those folks are really what helped us see the playground come to fruition. Patrick Beckley, our phys ed teacher, is spending time with children, giving them lessons on how to use the equipment in a safe manner. He's also providing staff with training on how to use the equipment in a safe manner. So we're making sure that everybody knows how to use it and knows how to use it in a safe manner. So thank you, everybody. It was a real nice partnership and a really nice gift to the community. We had our first substitute teacher orientation. We've been speaking about this for a while to ensure that everybody who comes into our building who's working with our children was on the same page. 15 people showed up, substitutes. We talked about the expectations we have of each other for our children. We spoke about safety and health protocols, and then just the nuts and bolts of schedules, payroll, and signing in. So I thought it was a nice start to ensure that everybody's informed, they know what to do, and they're empowered with the information so that they do right by our kids and by our school district. So it was a great success. And it was facilitated by Alex and Frank Guglieri, who is our regional safety coordinator from BOCES. We also had our first emergency response meet and greet, and that was also a great success. Community responders came in, they met with our staff, they met with our building response team, they toured the building. It was nice to put faces to names and really see in person and experience in person how many people are really supporting our students and us in the community. So it was just a nice first step to bigger partnerships that I see.
Sheriff, fire, ambulance, anybody
Yes,
else?
thank you to Sheriff Langley, Commanding Officer from Cold Spring Larry Burke, Lee Erickson from the Garrison Fire Company, Captain Tompkins, Officer Pizzuto, and Officer Christy Wilson.
Ambulance corps, anybody?
They couldn't, they had an emergency, unfortunately.
As good a
That's
reason
no
as you could
excuse.
have, right?
So, and then lastly, on the September 26th board meeting, our architects, Garrett and Rich from Tetra Tech, and Jason, our financial advisor from Bernard Donegan, will be presenting our priorities, how they fall under our PISA capital project: preservation, innovation, safety, security, and access, and providing the financials. And then we'll be seeking board approval for moving forward. So it's important that we're all here to hear sort of the final overview, the final financials, and know what our journey and how it will go. The hope is we go to the public for a vote on December 4th. So.
Garrett's presentation will be circulated through, I'm saying this as if I know. My expectation is that Garrett's presentation will be circulated to board members beforehand so that everybody, and anything from our financial advisors also beforehand so that everyone has a chance to review it, digest it, formulate questions so that we have a definitive meeting on the 26th.
And if you have questions beforehand, send them to me and I will forward them to Garrett and Rich and Jason so that they can prepare as well.
Good.
And that's all I have.
Well, how many
Questions?
subs do we have?
Well, let's see, 15 came on that orientation, and I believe about 5 more still have to go through orientation. So about 20.
No, that's good, strong.
Yeah.
Okay, okay.
It's a good pool.
Laura, do we still have an event this Friday at 6 o'clock? That's the playground ribbon cutting?
No, due to weather,
Okay.
we combined it with the community barbecue, which is just nice, just as nice as well. We'll have lots of community members, families, and we'll be cutting a big ribbon.
We moved it before the forecaster started to shift. We
Yeah.
were worried for a while.
Just as well.
Yeah.
The enrollments, it's very positive to see that number climb up, that total number. The question I have, or the concern I might have would be when we have we divide enrollments binarily between males and females, and when I see a single digit male or female, like a 7 or a 6 and a 2 here, it makes me ask questions about whether we're doing everything we need to for those students, that they're having a positive experience, etc. And to be mindful of that dynamic between possible dynamics and needs that particular people might have.
Yes.
In other words, the 8th grade or the 7th grade.
That class has had that composition
For a long
Right.
time.
since they got
Couple
it.
years, right? Well,
Or
Are you
close
talking
to,
about
well,
the 7th grade?
yeah, the 6th
Yeah.
grade has 6 girls in it, and the new K has 7 boys. It's just, we should just be mindful that, despite your gender, sexuality constructs, that, you know, people might have, students might have issues. So be mindful about how that gets played out. It can be a positive thing to have that kind of experience, you know, that kind of discrepancy. It can be a very positive thing. It doesn't have to be a negative thing. So, but I think we should be concerned about socialization, et cetera, when we have those kinds of asymmetrical representations. That's a big word. Sorry.
Other questions? for
Meetings.
Laura? If not, Alex, principal's remarks.
Good evening, everyone. So we have successfully made it through 6 days, so a full rotation of letters A through F. So I think that is a feat in and of itself.
Congratulations.
And that is a testament, I think, to the students, the parents, the staff has worked incredibly hard, and that showed itself. So what I did project up, which you can view anytime. So this is one of our 2 social media venues. So this is our Twitter feed. So for the elementary setting, we had quite a packed house, I would say. I think we set out about 100 chairs, and I would say approximately twice that many standing. Was a little bit warm, shall we say, but nonetheless, everyone was in good spirits as we circulated through the school on both evenings, and last night was our middle school open house. Once again, well attended. All of our parents who were in attendance had great things to say about our staff, and it was just nice for them to be able to showcase what they do every day. I know that we have also, this is another means by which, so what I've started to do, I know we're accustomed to the Facebook page that Mr. Griffiths had set up. So this actually I've gone ahead and basically posted both. So hopefully that's another means by which updates regarding open houses, or I did have a picture up there of Mr. Beckley setting up the goals and making sure that was done within days, because it really did matter for the soccer competition out there. So within days he was quite efficient with that. So that being said, great start to the school year, and once again, I'm humbled to be part of the community, and thank you.
Terrific, Alex. Thank you very much. Questions? for
Any
Alex?
questions?
No, that's terrific, and congratulations on another great smooth start. I only get to drive by now around on opening day, but it's still great to see everyone.
Jill has a question.
Oh, Jill, sorry.
I have a question for you.
Sure.
So I heard that you rode the buses.
Yes, you heard
What
correctly.
did you learn?
Very good question.
There's a lot to be learned. What I learned quite a few. So I actually have been on 3 of the 4 buses, and I actually stepped onto the yellow bus the first day, red last Friday, and then blue yesterday. So I have 1 left, and really it's just an opportunity for me to familiarize myself with where our students are coming from, our community, also just the logistics of our transportation, just to see some of the ins and outs of the routes. Our drivers really take their time. They do have quite a difficult job, and I think that having sat in the seat behind them and seeing everything that they have to manage and do so successfully, I think that's really a testament to them and to the work of Mr. Tuardi. I think like anything else in the school, I think there is a lot to be learned, and I think that I'm hoping that just by me being there in the beginning of the year, not that it will resolve any and every single matter, but I think presence and visibility is important, and I just want the students to know that I am there. And some of them thought I was saving gas money, which I tried to communicate that wasn't the case. So I'm sure the stories abounded throughout the community as to, but nonetheless, it was just an opportunity for me to again get to speak with the students, and they were really just they're wonderful. It was just yet another opportunity for me to just engage with them. And
They must have been both a surreal moment for them as well as a kick that you're there. You know?
Yeah.
It's good.
more so for the younger ones, I believe.
Yeah, the older ones probably weren't too.
They were curious if I was actually allowed to go onto the bus, I think. So that I think shook a few of them at first, but we grew, it's been fun. So green is on my agenda.
What, speaking of your agenda, it was just, I missed the last meeting, and I just want to say welcome, and we're here to support you in ways that we can, in obviously appropriate ways. I'm wondering if you can just articulate briefly what your ambition is this year for, in your role, in your capacity, what you hope to sort of achieve for the school or for what you think you're going to be focusing on throughout the year.
Sure. And I think that's a conversation that from the moment I set foot into this school during the interview process, I was just quite impressed by the dedication of the entire staff, parents, what have you. And I only say that now because I think for me, as I had said early on, and I've continued to say, my first and foremost priority is the safety of our children. And it was wonderful to see that from the moment I stepped into this building, the things that I had noted and mentioned, parents have approached me, and I can say with confidence that the concerns that people may have security of our students, that this building, and to no work of my own, I think I'm just continuing the good work that has been started by the administrative team, our staff, our emergency response team, and once again, as Laura had said, I have yet to be in the district to see on a professional learning day an entire day dedicated to having our first responders come tour the building, have those conversations prior to, knock on wood, some kind of crisis, and just to again form relationships with those people. I think that's just really indicative of the kind of community this is, and I just hope to really just continue that, I think, for the first year. And again, the other things I feel like I've really seen some wonderful steps, but again, safety is really going to be the first and foremost thing to just ensure that we're, hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, sure. Other questions for Alex? If not, thank you. That's terrific, Alex. Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Now down to business. Consent agenda. Actually, this one's fairly straightforward. Only B through K. Resolve the Board of Education of the Garrison Union Free School District approves the consent agenda items 5, B through K, as presented. The first is the minutes of the August 21 board meeting. That's in your package. Item 2 is the CSE recommendations. That is also approved CSE recommendations. Also in your package, we have an elementary school teacher to appoint, and that is approved appointment of Sarah Stevenson to a probationary term of 4 years as an elementary school teacher in the tenure area of elementary education effective August 29, 2018. Her probationary period commenced August 29, 2018 and will expire on August 28, 2022, contingent upon achievement of effective or highly effective APPR ratings necessary to receive tenure through her probationary period, consistent with the requirements of education law. Sections 3012-D. She holds a permanent New York State certification in pre-K kindergarten and grades 1 through 6. Salary for this position for 2018-19 will be based on an MA Step 3 level of the Garrison Teachers Association salary schedule to be determined upon completion of contract negotiations. One more of these. Approve the position decrease in appointment of a part-time ENL teacher. That's approve the decrease in the part-time English as a new language, an ENL, teacher position from .34 to .29 full-time equivalent, and approve the appointment of Megan O'Brien Police to the position of part-time .29 FTE ENL teacher effective August 30, 2018, until such time as notice of termination of the appointment is approved but no later than June 27, 2019. The salary for this position will be based on .29 of the MA Step 1 level of the Garrison Teachers Association salary schedule to be determined upon completion of contract negotiations. Laura, you can elaborate on that when I get through the last 3 items. We're going to approve the position increase and amend appointment of theater teacher. Let's approve the increase in the part-time theater teacher position from .5 to .57 FTE, and approve the amendment of the appointment of Elizabeth Heck, part-time theater teacher to .57 FTE effective August 29. You're going to want to say something about that too. We're also going to accept the resignation of Ian Berger from the part-time position of English teacher effective at the close of business September 21, 2018. We're going to appoint a mentor, and that mentor is Marjorie Gugliano as a mentor for the 2018-19 school year at a stipend to be determined upon completion of contract negotiations. Also may want to comment about that. And the next one, approve appointment of Jessica Van Decker as a mentor for the 18-19 school year at a stipend to be determined upon completion of contract negotiation. Substitute teacher, that's appointment of Sheila Williams as a substitute teacher for the 18-19 school year at the rate of $85 a day. And item last, approve Putnam Northern Westchester BOCES final approve Putnam Northern Westchester BOCES final AS-7 contract for the 2017-18 school year. That contract is in your package, and you can tell us what that is too.
So moved. Seconded.
Laura, would you like to elaborate on any,
You wanna,
as appropriate,
Sure.
any or all of
So
those
I'll start with
comments?
elementary teacher Sarah Stevenson. We decided to split one grade, so that created a new position for a teacher. So we went through the whole interview process. We went through a number of resumes, Alex and myself, and cover letters, and did half-hour initials with a bunch of candidates. Then we recommended a few candidates to the interview team, all shining stars. And Sarah, each step shined a little brighter, a little brighter, a little brighter. So we brought her on board. She was also a substitute here last year, so we were really able to see her in action. And she lots of commendations, accolades from kids, parents, and her fellow staff members. So we're happy that she
what
is
grade
on
did she
board.
substitute last year?
All grades.
She was not a long-term substitute.
No, right.
Okay,
Yeah.
gotcha.
So she was exposed to all grades, and teachers saw her in action. So we're thrilled that she has joined our team. The decrease in ENL students take a test or an assessment called NICESLAT, and as they move along in the assessment and gain levels, they receive certain amount of time. So our students last year, where they were in the NICESLAT assessments, were receiving 350 minutes per week. So that was the .34. Both students gained a level in NICESLAT. So now one student is no longer receiving 350. He made such great gains that he needs 150 minutes per week. So that creates the .29. And
Someone
we're
talked
better
themselves
student
out of a
does.
job.
So we'll let her what she gets. Exactly. So I
Incentive.
told her that she's, and this is commendations to Wendy from last year. She was the ENL teacher, and we welcome Megan. We're happy she's here with us. I think she's going to maybe work herself out of a job here too, because she's so good. So.
Let's keep to it.
The theater increase. So the English teacher, when we're also in the process of identifying somebody to fill that position, but that position decreased and made the theater increase because they're dependent on one another.
Okay.
So that's where that change is.
So Elizabeth Heck is covering the middle school drama. Is that the deal? Is that why that's increasing?
The English teacher position will decrease, and so she absorbs that decrease.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, okay. So what we've approved is an increase of 7/100ths of
I
an
think it's gonna break us.
FTE.
Yes. We calculate by periods,
And I got it, that's
Yeah.
fine.
and
This is-
Sue loves that.
This is 7/100ths.
We
of
sit with our
FTE.
calculators, divide, add, and multiply,
All right.
and we come up with these.
I see. Ian, we know, okay,
Yeah.
and was there anything else?
And the mentor.
Oh, yeah,
so
tell
that's
us what
the
mentor is.
mentor is contractual. All new teachers are provided with a mentor. It's usually a teacher, a tenured teacher here, or teachers who would like to support teacher and content, as well as just the nuts and bolts of how our district works. I believe the stipend is $900. So
And that commits them to a certain specified number of hours during which they are mentoring their subject new teacher?
there's no number of hours.
Really?
They're assigned to somebody specifically?
It's usually a teacher in-house who will say, I'd like to mentor this person. So for instance, Chris is mentoring Rose, that was approved last time. That makes sense because he taught units of study last year. She's teaching English as well as Spanish. Marjorie's right next door to Sarah, so she'll be mentoring Sarah. And then Jessica is the school psychologist, and she'll be mentoring the school counselor. So it's all very much aligned. It makes sense. It's practical.
Is it unusual that, obviously we've heard nothing but amazing things about Marjorie, but she's only been here for a year.
Yes.
Is that unusual to take
Yes.
on a mentorship program?
Yes. She's
great.
she's practicing the responsive classroom, and Sarah is
Right.
very interested in that. And so Marjorie said I would be happy to mentor in that. But she also, all of our teachers have lots of colleagues that always support them as well. So she just has this go-to person.
realized that prior to her being here in the district, Ms. Giuliano, that she had taught for a number of years outside of the district. So while for a year, for all intents and purposes, 1 year here, her work in responsive classroom is clearly one of many things that led us to this decision being a fitting one.
And what's the AS7 contract?
That's the big one.
AS-7, I don't recall it being referred to that way.
You know, it's an odd thing. It's the expenses from last year being approved. And we do this every year, and you ask every year. I don't know why it's approved after the fact, because before the fact, it's actually Laura approving what expenses we anticipate. This shows what we actually spent. And when I really went through the list very quickly, some of the expenses that we didn't anticipate, you've already heard about. We did a lot of professional development. There was a lot of guidance studies. So those are the added expenses that I see on a quick look at this. But they're really actually expenses that already happened, so.
Any other questions before we have a motion on the table? Any other questions on the consent agenda items?
Yeah, the BOCES contract is, I wanted to advise fellow board members to take a good look at it, only because it comprises about 7% of our budget. Is that correct?
It's in our packet, yeah.
Not every year. We did a lot of professional development this year through BOCES. So no, I would say that we really did cut back on costs, but our costs are very high this year because we have special ed in there, and we have a couple of placements in there, is what I meant to say, and we're doing a lot of professional development. So
yeah, I'm not drawing attention to whether the expenditures were wise or not wise. It's just that it's a significant amount of money, and that we should just, as due diligence be whenever we have a significant portion of our budget, we should be aware of, how that's being used, just so we can articulate its value.
if you look to, and
I did.
one of the things that maybe Laura and I could arrange is actually having BOCES present sometime this year, because they haven't done it in years. So you would get a better understanding of all the different services they provide, because there's so many different services within this contract. And we do go out and try to get the best prices on things. But some services, for instance, that a small district like us to go and get on our own would be a lot more expensive than us sharing through BOCES. So.
Satisfy my curiosity. If we have a high school student at Haldane, for example, which is covered by Putnam, Northern Westchester, and that student is taking BOCES vocational courses at BOCES, is that,
We're paying for it.
we pay for that? That doesn't come out of the tuition that we pay?
It does, because Haldane will pay for it, say, or O'Neill, and then they charge us for those. They charge us.
But they net it out against the, okay. They net it out against the per student tuition that we would
Yes,
otherwise pay.
Yes, we're not paying.
You're not paying, that's
the
what I
original amount, but
I
we're
didn't think
paying
so.
whatever they're paying, yes.
Got it. All right. If there are no other questions on the consent agenda, all those in favor? Aye. No abstentions, no nays. Thank you all very much. There's only one action item. We had the report from the auditors. We had a chance to ask them questions, and the audit committee itself had an in-depth briefing from them, and as a result, we have a resolution to accept their report as presented. As resolved, the Board of Education of Garrison Union Free School District accepts the external audit report for the 2017-18 school year submitted by O'Connor Davies LLP.
So moved.
Have a second?
Seconded.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
No abstentions, no nays. And once again, let me echo what our auditor said. Thank you to Sue in particular, Laura as well, and the rest of the administrative team here in making that audit go as well as it did. Public comment.
It's right. Public
Yeah,
right.
where'd the public go?
That's all right.
This is
I'm Sarah Tormey. I'm the current president of the Garrison Children's Education Fund, also known as GSEF. I first want to say a huge thank you to Laura, to Sue, and to Michael for working so hard on the playground and keeping the students' safety at the top of their mind, really evaluating this equipment. I think Michael has touched every screw, examined every inch of this mulch, the mulch. And we're really excited to open it and share it with all the students and the larger community. As noted before, we will be moving the ribbon cutting that was previously scheduled for 6 p.m. Friday to right before the community barbecue which is on September 22nd at 4 p.m. And that was initially due to weather. I think the weather's going to be fine, but we had a lot of businesses who contributed to the playground too. So we personally called them to make sure that they knew when this ribbon cutting was, and we didn't want to catch them off guard last minute. And we really appreciate their support and the rest of the community support for this project. And we hope to see you all at the barbecue. The food will be free. Bring your friends. It'll be great. And then I also wanted to share a note I had from Ms. D'Alessio, who worked on the second grade green classroom grant, which GSEP approved over the summer, which is to transform the second grade room into a green space. And the room is gorgeous. I appreciate the school's contribution. If you go down and look at it, it's been painted. It's just a warm, welcoming space. It really contributes to her responsive classroom technique. I sat through the orientation presentation the other night. It was fabulous. But after we approved it, and this is not included in what we funded, community members came forward and have donated objects, things for this classroom. And I have a note from her that specifically wants to thank some community members for an 8-foot raw wood slab bench that now is part of this classroom that was built and configured into a gorgeous piece of furniture that is at the height for the students to use. So a very big thank you to Jeff and James Dane at Dane's Lumber for a donation of a beautiful piece of wood.
Former board member.
A huge thank you. See, I don't know the history. I just know that our classroom looks better because of these people. A huge thank you also to Mike Monteleone. Thank you so much for taking on the components and time to create basically a work of art of this. The students love it. It really contributes to that space, and it's just gorgeous. In addition, and that didn't come out of the funding from GSEP, so really appreciate people hearing about our grants, coming forward to donate. The Phillipstown Garden Club has also offered $250 for use throughout the year to enhance the gardening projects in the green classroom. There's a part of the grant-funded plants. In addition, Ms. Giuliano asked every parent for the kids to bring in a plant. They will be tending to their plants throughout the year in the classroom. So this is just one more step for someone in the community hearing about what's happening here and stepping up and enhancing our classrooms. So we're so happy to hear this. And then I'd like to switch hats for just a second, and not as a GSEP member, but as a parent of third and second grader. I have a question about the school lunch fund. Our school doesn't currently have a school lunch program, so I'm wondering what the $4,463 came from, if it could possibly be used to launch a school lunch program, as I know the Hot Lunch Task Force was discussing at the end of last year. So I'm just curious how that money even got there. Was there a lunch program at one point as a holdover?
Did you want to talk about
Sue, maybe.
Ice and milk?
Well,
Is it milk? 4,000?
we do have a lunch program, believe it or not. It's
Okay.
called the milk program.
Okay.
Because we sell milk, the state recognizes it as a lunch program.
Okay.
We actually do get federal funds to help run that. So the money that we charge for milk and the federal funds somehow has creeped up a little bit over the years. I mean, this fund balance has been there actually for years. We actually did do some spending. If you've been in the cafeteria lately, you'll see that there's a microwave and a clock, and there was some utensils and all
That
that
came
stuff
out
was
of
bought
this?
with fund balance, because it was a few thousand more. So that's it. I mean, it's I think the auditor answered that question earlier as far as like what the funds, it's really meant for the cafeteria. As far as starting a new program, I don't know if that, I don't really know the answer to that.
I think one
It's
of
really used in the cafeteria as it is, like you can fix the stove or the refrigerators and that
you
type of
spend
thing.
it on food. But what is the annual budget for it? What do we, because this is accrued over time, is that the deal? It's not like that number's there every year.
Okay.
It's,
And it sounds like it's spoken for this mill
well, I don't
and
know.
other things.
Well, it's actually the source of the revenue.
That's the source
That's
of
the revenue
revenue.
source.
Okay.
Yeah. It's, the revenue comes from the 25 cents in charge for milk and federal funds that are used. Yeah, I have to file a report every month, basically, with the state, and the funds come in. We're given it by the number of students we have that are considered free and reduced lunch type of thing.
Okay.
So that's where the money has been accumulated from. It's just basically pennies over the years, I would say, where it's, because it's really not, I mean, it's not a big balance, really, $4,000.
No, it's not. I just
No.
wanted, we hear hot lunch.
It's been.
No, that's right. Good to hope
Just
so.
curious. All right, thank you
Yeah.
very much.
Thank you, Sarah. Sarah, by the way, I might add, just to follow up on your
Yes.
recognition of Danes and Montpellier and the Garden Club and so on. It is good to hear, in as much as when we first talked about the donation and the support you had gotten, GSEP had gotten to assemble the playground itself. You each, at one time or another, described part of the mission of GSEP as being an, maybe not these exact words, but an incubator for a thought leader on to create a deeper, broader, community-wide sense of giving and supporting the school. This does seem to bear that out, so congratulations on that.
I also think it speaks to the school's commitment to the Green Classroom Initiative, and I know Ms. Giuliano was rather inspired by, and she came from a green school in the city, but also the climate change resolution, when the board was looking to what actually was going to come of that. This is something, it's not huge, it's not this big thing, but it's something that came from its staff that speaks to how we can put that program into place. Small little changes by having plants in classrooms. So, but thank you. Yeah, we do hope to see a great culture of giving, which is why we hope people will come out for a community barbecue, and everyone really has a place in our culture of giving. No matter how much you give, you're a part of what we've built and what's happening in these classrooms.
You have to put a jar out for that day.
The barbecue is
Yes.
At what time?
4 p.m. We're going to cut the ribbon.
And
Probably.
it's for the entire community.
Yes,
Yeah.
please. We welcome everyone.
So it might be a good place to invite Danes and Montpellier.
Yes, we've been calling businesses
Ask
and
them to come.
informing them
Do
of
people
the
bring
days.
food?
No, we're providing all the food.
Okay, great.
Karen Nelson has stepped up to man the grills, thank goodness. I have no idea how to do that. But we will have burgers, hot dogs, vegetarian options, vegan options, gluten-free options,
Yeah,
all of the
all
above.
the options. All the options.
So
Nut
yeah,
free,
and-
nut free,
No.
nut free options.
Yes, nut free. But yeah, for example, I bumped into a family who just moved here. Their child is not school age, but they will be one day. And it's a great opportunity to come out, meet the people in the community.
Okay.
This is a school your child will go to in a year or two. So come see it, come feel a part of it.
Sure.
And then when you're asked to vote on December 4th, you know, you feel familiar with the space. You feel welcome and a part of this. And I hope that will also be a part of it. Thank you.
Thanks. Board member comment.
No, I just want to ask Lois, at some point, I'd love a little refresher on what we do for lunches now. I mean, I'm from the day when we had pizza lunches and in the 8th grade.
People to help out, so they're trying to figure out where is there a place that's manageable. Is it every Tuesday? Is it every third Thursday? Is it every other week? So they're just trying to figure that out. And then we did have that hot lunch task force last year, which we're still working on, sort of like what are we doing this year and exploring other options for the year after. We did go to Lakeland just to see what their structure is, and is there some opportunity for us to fall under their umbrella. We still have to have that meeting with the superintendent, their food services, and our business folks. So that's sort of our next step, just to see if that's an option. But it's pretty similar to what it has been.
Other comments?
Yeah, I'd like to, well, as the board liaison to GSEP, once again, say thank you to Sarah for all all of the work you've done in
Yes.
getting this
Right.
playground
Here, here.
going and almost up and running. I heard my eldest child actually got to step foot on it today, and she was very excited. Even the 8th graders gave up their cool for a little while, so that was really good.
That will be short-lived.
Definitely, but the little ones are gonna love it. And I encourage all of us, board members included, to attend the ribbon cutting, because we've got to support it. It's gonna be amazing. And then I'd just like to revisit a conversation that started at the last board meeting, and unfortunately that I started having with David Gelber after the meeting, and unfortunately he can't be here tonight. But we talked about the substitute, how much the substitutes are paid, and looking at if there's a possible way of paying our substitutes more than $85. And we thought perhaps a good place to start was to ask for an audit of what generally what we have been, how much total we have been paying substitutes, how many days, breakdown of elementary versus middle school, just to look at what has been going into that program, and then thinking about wondering if there's a possibility of looking at some other options like using student teachers. I know a couple of years ago there were 2 student teachers in the school in classrooms for a full semester, and they were able to absorb some responsibility when teachers were out, and that might be something that we could revisit, and a possibility of paying our subs more.
I think, didn't we go through a thing where you looked up all the schools around? Maybe we should revisit that again with the board.
We do another survey
No.
of districts too.
Well, yes, I think having a sort of fully prepared, an informed discussion about substitutes is something we should do. One of the questions that we should address in that is what's the problem, if any, that we're trying to solve for? All right, is there a concern about the quality of substitutes in the classroom experience? And do we believe by increasing the per diem we can address that? So yes, this is not the time for it, but sure, let's put that on the agenda for an upcoming meeting, and let's have it fully briefed with the idea that we address this thing strategically, and if there's a problem we're trying to solve for, let's be clear about what that is. If there's an opportunity we're missing, let's be clear about what that is before we go to the.
Ray, didn't
Go
we,
to
when we increased it, what, within the last 2 years or a year
It
ago?
was like 2 or 3 years
2
ago.
or 3 years ago.
And I think
Increased $10.
that was to try to stay,
a day.
so we were competitive.
Well, this is again, these are the questions you want to, and again, not to get into this now, but these are some of the questions we want to explore in a fully formed discussion of this. Back then, if I recall, the problem we were trying to solve for was the difficulty in accessing substitutes. People were paying more, and it was harder. Our demand, we had high need and difficulty finding people because we were paying below the market. If that's one problem, that's easily said. If there's other issues that we need to be exploring with respect to how we use substitutes and our experience with them, then let's make that part of that conversation.
Right.
Well, it'd be good to know, right, how the education of the children is being impacted by substitutes.
To be honest with you, I would love to know, and I still, to my knowledge, there's a metric for everything in education. So there should be a metric that says, given the number of teachers you have, or the number of students, or the number of classes you have, you should expect to be using this level of substitutes in any given period, over a month, a year, a school year, whatever. Where do we stand vis-a-vis the mean use of substitutes across the state? I have no idea. Are we high? Are we low?
And then
these are related.
Yeah, they're all related.
I would love to know what those metrics.
And then what and I think it varies greatly what the experience might be with any particular substitute. You could have a wonderful lesson plan already carved out by a previous teacher. They might have the opportunity to create one. And I know there are protocols. The question is are they being followed? Are the students getting them? When we have teachers going out for professional development, for whatever reason, all legitimate reasons to employ substitutes. The question is, what rhythms, what momentums that the children are experiencing are being interrupted, and is it let's be mindful of that. That would be my concern. I don't know what your concern is necessarily, but my concern is, if we know how many we're using, what's the experience of the usage?
Well, yeah, again, this is not for now.
Okay.
But
Of course.
But having said that, now I'm going to make me mad. If you were to find, hypothetically, that your use of substitutes is substantially above what the statewide mean is, that's one indicia of the health of the district.
Sure.
Are you teachers calling in sick, taking days at a substantially higher level than the mean? And if they are, and I'm not saying, what does that tell you? So if we're going to have a substitute conversation, that's the level at which I think we ought to be.
But couldn't our
Start.
size make a difference?
No, all of this would be netted out on a per student basis or a per teacher basis.
And also we have increased, like words of advice comes 30, 35 times a year, times the number of teachers that they're working with. Therapeutic crisis intervention, there are 10 substitutes for 10 people, 4 days, and we have four cohorts, so it will.
Absolutely. So there are lots of ways to
We
explain
increase, yeah.
and understand the use of substitutes.
Yeah, and the question, yeah, so then it comes down to, okay, that's a legitimate use of the
Yeah.
substitute. Then the question is, but what is the children's experience with the substitute? And that's when we get into the quality control issue.
Okay, but that's hard for us to get.
No, but I mean, the
That's-
question is
That would
whether
be
the,
the
Superintendent and
teachers
principal.
and the superintendent, yeah.
that's right, but
You're gonna,
that's right.
you want to know that if you're using substitutes, you're doing it to the best advantage. of the
Right, if
kids.
we're approving their hires and paying for it, we have to make sure that, we have to make sure do our due diligence, and that the expense has been, properly managed, et cetera. Not to manage it ourselves, of course, but to seek the necessary information to determine whether we're doing a proper oversight.
Other comments? Courtney, were you finished?
I'm good.
Okay, you good?
I think, every sort of summer gives me a chance to reflect on being on the board and all the things I failed to contribute and all the things that, all the ridiculousness that I bring. But, this is a very special year, I think. We have, obviously, a new principal. That brings a certain amount of excitement. But we also have a significant number of new faces in the building. We have a significant number of new faces, new community members, and I think that it's kind of imperative to make sure that we are being guided by strategically and smartly through proper planning. So one of the things that I would like to focus my concerns, because I'm trying to concentrate my energies, will be on focusing on how we're conceiving of our academic plan over time. What the principal and the superintendent and the educational leadership are determining our priorities, how we are executing them, and making sure that we are doing our proper oversight on the educational side. So curriculum instruction being a key component, as well as, what are the general learning outcomes we expect our students to have at the end of 8th grade? What are those learning outcomes? How do we concretize them? How do we make them very concrete? And how are we measuring whether we're doing what we say we're doing, So I think the beginning of that conversation is really important. The other thing is communication about these new phases. I think it's really imperative that we communicate whenever we have a significant shift. A new teacher is a significant shift. Because there's so few of us, few teachers in the building, I think, or a few, it's such a small district. It's important that we are able to articulate that there's going to be a shift, and that communicate that there's new people, introducing those folks either through any kind of communication we can ahead of time, so that parents are prepared for what is happening. I understand that we're still seeking a middle school English teacher, right? So getting ahead of the game and making sure parents are informed and I'm just, just want to emphasize the importance that new people, it's important that new people feel welcome. It's also important that the community understands, parents understand that there are new people in the building, so that they are informed. That's it.
Jill, anything?
Yes. To piggyback on what James just said, I want to give Laura praise for leading, I believe it's 5 searches for principal, an ENL teacher, a 5th grade teacher, a Spanish teacher, and a grade 7 and 8 ELA teacher. And you have done this expeditiously, but with great care. And our number 1 priority is for the safety of the children, but the 1.25 after that is instruction, because that's why we're here. And so I admire the care that you've taken with these searches, and I'm just wanting to publicly state that it has been a big deal, and you've done a great job.
Thank you, but I cannot take that all by myself. That is a team, so thank you very much, but this is not a one-person team.
I know.
Yeah, I've got lots of people who care for our children and working strategically and finding the right people, so, but thank you, Phil, I appreciate it.
Diana, anything? No. If there's nothing else, why don't we adjourn? Resolve the Board of Education of Garrison Union Free School District adjourns its September 12th regular board meeting.
So moved.
In a second. All those in favor? Aye. Motion is nays. Thank you all very much.
But we have no